Now available for the first time in paperback. Stop Simping in the Workplace. Men, learn what you need to know in order to protect your job from workplace predators with Stop Simping in the Workplace. Available in paperback at online booksellers everywhere. In the aftermath of the mass shooting which took place at the MillerCoors facility in Milwaukee, it's clear that the MillerCoors management did nothing to support Anthony Farrell, the 51-year-old black male who participated in the mass shooting that led to the deaths of 5 co-workers who he believed were bullying and harassing him. And while MillerCoors did nothing to protect Anthony Farrell from these racist and the culture of racism at MillerCoors, there are things that black people can do to protect themselves from racists like those who work at places like MillerCoors and ensure that their safety is taken care of in these types of work environments. And the first thing black people need to do when they enter a work environment like a MillerCoors is they have to understand that they are working behind enemy lines. Now, a lot of black people, they believe that every workplace is supposed to be equal and equal opportunity, but that's not the case when you are a black man in America. When you are a black man in America, you have to understand that you are behind enemy lines and that this workplace is going to have a culture of white supremacy and racism as the social norm. And when you understand this, you are not looking to become friends with anyone in that workplace. You are not looking to become a part of the culture in that workplace, nor do you believe you are owed anything by that workplace except wages for your employment. And when you understand these concepts, then you can enter that workplace and leave the same way you came in. You're not looking to get any sort of emotional attachment to anybody in that workplace, anything in that workplace, because that workplace was not designed for you. It was not designed to support you. And this is all essential to a black man's survival, is understanding that when you go to work in these companies owe you nothing but a paycheck. Now, in addition to not only owing you a paycheck, these workplaces have to ensure that you are safe while doing your work. And they have to make sure that you're safe while you're doing your work because under our United States Constitution, we are guaranteed certain rights under the law. And one of the rights we are guaranteed under the law, especially as related to labor laws, is a right to a safe work environment. So an work environment that you're in has to be able to provide you with not only proper tools to do your work, but provide you with a professional environment to do your work. So black men or black women who enter a workplace, you have the right to a work environment where you can do your work in a workmanlike manner and do your work up to a professional standard without having to deal with interference from supervisors and co-workers. So while these people may not like you, they do not have a right to interfere with your work and impede your ability to perform on that job. And that's a standard that you have to maintain because you are the only one, again, responsible for your keeping that job. And you have to watch out for racists who want to try to make it look like you cannot perform your work up to standard. So you have to, again, make sure that your work is up to standard because you have a right to a safe work environment where you can do your work in a professional manner. Now, there are going to be individuals who are going to look to start with you in the workplace. These racists, like these white racists, some of these Hispanic racists, and Asian racists, some of these people are going to look to start with you when you are a black man on the job. And there are ways of dealing with these individuals. And the first way you deal with these individuals is by documenting whatever transpired and then making sure that once you've had everything documented, then you take it to human resources so that they can have a record of knowing, okay, this incident happened, because once they get put on notice, then they have to actually deal with this issue
And if they do not deal with this issue, then you have a paper trail to start. And with the start of that paper trail, you have the foundations of a federal lawsuit. So it's always important to document whatever happens if you have to deal with a racial slur or any sort of racial encounter. Make sure that you document it not only with your own personal records, but make sure you document it with human resources so that they are held accountable when these matters happen. Now, they said at MillerCoors there was a culture of racism, but what was said was Anthony Farrell and others weren't thinking critically enough to go out of their way to document and not only report it with human resources, but also document it and record it in digital files for hard evidence. Because when you have hard evidence, then you have the foundations of a legal case, which shows us a pattern and practice of racial discrimination. And when you have the foundations for the pattern and practice, you can practically win an open and shut case in a federal court. Because again, according to federal law, discrimination and racial behavior is illegal, and participating in racial violence, like putting nooses up in people's lockers or personal space, this is something that can be prosecuted as a hate crime. And if human resources does not deal with these issues in an expedient manner, then you can take this individual to a federal court, and you can take the corporation to civil court, and you can win punitive damages against that organization for not dealing with this racial terrorism in a constructive manner and not educating people to know that racial terrorism and racial violence, or the implication of violence, will not be tolerated. And again, you have to document this noose or whatever racial epithets are that were perpetrated on you. And in some cases, if you have a cell phone, you take pictures of that evidence so that there's a picture to show that this actually transpired and that this was what happened at the time. Moreover, you also want to make sure you get audio recordings, because if somebody is a known racist and known to use racial slurs, what you want to do is go out here and record this person on audio, because if you can get hard evidence that this person is using racial slurs on the job, then what you have is a recording that, again, is admissible in court as evidence to show that there is a pattern and practice of racism going on in the workplace, and that there is a culture of racism and discrimination in the workplace that is going on, that is not being dealt with effectively by human resources, and that there was a culture of not instituting disciplinary action to ensure that hate speech, and people who participate in hateful actions are dealt with accordingly and disciplined accordingly, whether it be by suspension, whether it be by termination, or whether it just be by ensuring that new policies are put in place to ensure that there's discipline or termination of these individuals. If there is no policy done by human resources, again, you can then go find a lawyer who will eagerly take this case, because once you come in with hard evidence of the employer not dealing with a racist individual, then they can go in and with the EEOC and other federal institutions and take legal action against them. And you can also take civil action against that company, saying that their pattern and practice of racism and allowing a culture of racism to go on is violating your federal civil rights. And they can go out here and not only get fines levied against that company, but they can also get punitive damages held against that company. And again, these are the remedies that you have for dealing with racists in the workplace. You have to, again, document what behaviors these individuals have participated in, report those behaviors to human resources, and if you have a cell phone or any other device, make sure you get visual evidence of these things, whether they be pictures that these people have put up, whether they be slurs these people have put up. Do not let anybody clean this stuff off the lockers or your personal space unless you get pictures of it first, because that hard evidence, again, is the thing that is going to protect you, because they're going to have their paper trail, but you have to also make sure you have your paper trail, because those paper trails are going to show, again, a pattern and a practice and a culture of this kind of behavior. And once you show that they have not effectively dealt with this culture of behavior, whether it be through a zero tolerance policy by terminating individuals who participate in this behavior, dealing with people like this by making sure that they are aware of the policies of the company and holding people accountable to those policies. These are things that you need to do because, again, you have a right to work in an environment where you are allowed to do your job in a professional and workmanlike manner. And while these people may have their opinions and viewpoints about certain people and ethnicities, they are not allowed to allow those biases to come into the workplace to the point where they can harass, intimidate, and terrorize other people, because, again, we have equal protections under the law. We have equal rights under the law. And again, you have a right to go to a workplace. There may be white supremacy as part of the culture and racism as part of the culture, but when it comes down to the workplace, there are laws and guidelines that people have to follow, and people do not have a right to harass you, intimidate you, or terrorize you in the workplace. And again, you need to know your rights if you enter any workplace out here. And again, if you ever encounter any sort of racism or hate in the workplace, what you have to do, again, is document that incident. Again, report it to human resources. If you have a cell phone, make sure you take pictures of it. Or if you're dealing with an individual who participates in using racial slurs or verbal communications or nonverbal communications, make sure you record it so that you can have that documentation, because again, all of this is evidence that you're going to need to protect yourself, and if you have to take legal action, it's going to be the basis for your case. Now, when I sadly look at this incident where your Anthony Farrell got so upset that not upset, but mentally troubled that he wound up murdering 5 people, this was all because Anthony Farrell, sadly, was so caught up in his emotions about race that he wasn't thinking critically. And again, he had the tools in front of him to use, like that cell phone they said he was watching movies on. If he had documented all of this evidence of these individuals participating in this what they call bullying behavior, but I call it terrorist behavior, what he could have done was go out here, document all this stuff, take it to a lawyer, and again, a lawyer would eagerly have taken that case and won a slam dunk case against MillerCoors that would have led to them being not only forced to pay Anthony Farrell compensation, but they would have also been forced to deal with their culture, because they would have been held accountable for that culture. And that's why it is very important, if you are ever in an encounter where you encounter racism on the job, to stay calm, stay cool, keep your emotions in check, and make sure, again, you document things, record things, and again, take it, after you take it to HR, take it to a lawyer, and then also, if you have to, take it to social media so that people can see for themselves the racist culture that goes on in these companies and the behavior of those individuals, so that those individuals, can be held accountable not only in a court of law, but can also be held accountable in a court of public opinion. Because when you have individuals who participate in a culture of racism in the workplace, it is not only important that we hold them accountable in a court of law, but we also socially put this on social media so that others can see this behavior and become disgusted by it. Because the more people see this culture of racism and how it is still out here, the more people will become embarrassed by it, and people in these companies like MillerCoors won't be able to do this behind closed doors, because the more you expose racists like those who are alleged to have worked at MillerCoors, the more people know about them, and then more that they know about them, the more they're going to deal with them, because no company wants to be known for hiring racists in their company, and they don't want that culture going out there, because if that culture goes out there, it reflects negatively on their product. So that's why it's important to expose these individuals. And sadly, I wish Anthony Farrell had not gone out here and murdered these individuals, because he had access to tools and resources, but sadly he wasn't in a mental state to use those tools, because he was so caught up in his emotions about the way he was being treated that he didn't understand there was a way to get recourse. And that recourse, again, is through the legal system, and it's also through social media, because if you shine more a light on these individuals, then we know who they are. And if these companies have these people in there, we can let other people know who they are, so that they won't buy their products. Because if the company continues to support people like this in a culture, the way we deal with them is by exposing them and then leading a group of people to say, we're not going to buy your products, because as long as you have these racists working for you, we have no interest in buying your products. And holding your dollar is another way to combat racists in these companies, because when you hold your dollar, what you do is you keep these companies from profiting at your expense, and you keep them from profiting and promoting a culture of racism. You have all the tools out here to fight these racists in the workplace. And again, the whole thing is, you have to use those tools to protect yourself in the workplace, because again, while our culture is racist and white supremacist, you have a right as a citizen to a job that allows you to do your work in a professional manner, and allows you to go to that workplace, do your work, and then leave that workplace safely. These are your rights as a black man or a black woman in the workplace, and you have to be aware of those rights, because these workplaces are hostile environments, and you have to enter them knowing that they're hostile. And when you know that they're hostile, you understand the only thing they owe you is a paycheck, and while you're working there, you have a right to a safe and professional work environment. If you want to learn more about workplace predators, you can pick up my book, Stop Simping in the Workplace. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.